for tuning in on this Sunday night for our Q&A. Looking forward to answering some really fantastic questions that folks have put forth. Thank you so much. Hope everyone had a great holiday season. We had an interesting week. Really a very interesting week. Like they say, may you live in interesting times. Sedition, kind of interesting. Seeing a group of folks who have been telling us that they're going to blow things up and terrorize us actually do it. Kind of interesting. What's interesting to me also is how shocked people were that it happened. And not just the left, that the people who have been telling us that they're going to do all of these things, that they actually did it. And I find that surprising. So tonight I'm going to answer the questions. We got a good number of questions that I really like, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well about what happened this past week. I'll tell you, on Wednesday as we were watching what unfolded happen, I wasn't shocked. I wasn't surprised. In fact, I said during our weekly show, our show, I woke up the morning and wondered aloud, how much blood will be shed in the streets today? I had been paying attention to the media posts and the social media from a lot of Trump supporters who were going to D.C. specifically to raise hell. Now, look, I'm somebody who's all in favor of raising hell and doing what you're doing. I'm a big supporter of peaceful protest, big supporter of protests in general. But this went to that next level. These people came with the intent. And universally, this wasn't just a handful of bad actors. You go down into the crowd and you heard people saying, we need to overthrow, we need to do these things. And that's what scared me. Now, am I against the idea of taking over the Capitol and occupying the Capitol? Not really. I'm not so much opposed to that as I am the part that they murdered a policeman. As I am the part that their intent was not just to occupy the space, but it was actually to usurp our democratic process. They went with the intent of stopping the Electoral College's vote count. And they did that for a short period of time. Mission accomplished. They were able to do that. Now, the defecating all over the floor and wiping it on the walls and taking a leak on Nancy Pelosi's desk. How do you justify that? Seriously. And what surprised me, and I'll be honest, because I've been one of these people who says, look, we've got to figure out how to take some of the Trump supporters and bring them back into the fold. Talk to them and say, hey, there's a way forward. We don't have to be so divided and so ripped apart. There are things we can agree on. And I used to believe that. And I still have great hope that there's a possibility. I had a conversation with a guy on Thursday, the day after the insurrection, and I said, what do you think? Big Trump supporter, had the flags, bought the T-shirts, had the hats, had it all. He was 110% in line with the thought. But he was distraught because he didn't believe that what happened on Thursday could possibly happen. I've touched back with him. He's still, having a crisis of conscience because he didn't think that was them. He didn't believe that's Antifa. That's those animals. He didn't believe that he could be part of this. Now, those people, I think we can reach. Those people who tonight are sitting here going, this isn't what I signed up for. I signed up for, tick down the things that Republicans say that they believe in. Say. Those folks I think we can reach. The people who right now are still saying that Donald Trump won and is taking over in March, those who are saying that it was all Antifa and it wasn't any God-fearing Christian conservatives who loved Donald Trump, it was Antifa. Those people we are never going to reach. You leave them aside. Get rid of them, done, dumped, gone. for me, it's the historical context that happened on Wednesday. This peaceful transition of power that this country has been not just known for, but the leader on, the only, I had a kid. I was doing a presentation at a school, and I had a kid say, "Who's your favorite president?" And I said, "Well, FDR, number one, without question." And I ticked on the reasons why FDR, the National Labor Relations Act, the Wagner Act, the Fair Labor Standards Act, Social Security, all of the things that the New Deal brought us. Big fan of those things, and which is something we're going to have to think about again. And I said John Adams. Now, John Adams has an interesting history, the Alien and Sedition Act and the things that the kind of hard, iron fist rule that we've known. But I said, the most important thing about Adams is when he lost, he left. Now, he may have left angry. He may have left, kind of like a thief in the night, if you will, but it wasn't at night. But he left. He relinquished power. And that moment was, any historians out there want to challenge me, please do, the first ideological change of power without bloodshed. That's what I think is so incredible about that. And we're in this moment right now where we had an election. Did we have problems in the election? Sure, we always do. There are always things that pop up. There are always irregularities. There are always those things. Always. You go back to me in 2000. Oh, I was screaming from the rafters. Never once said, "Hey, let's overthrow the government." 2004, big questions. Lots of them. Big problems. 2012, screaming about the voting machines. 2008 too, but not as much because it was a landslide. Every election, I've had problems. I am not someone who believes in the machines. Smash the machines. Go back to hand-marked paper ballots. Which is why I've said I really like the way I got to vote this last time. I said, "Hey, send me my ballot." They sent it to me. My name was on the envelope. I filled out my ballot. I stuffed it back in the secret carrier envelope, put it back in with the one that had my name on it. I signed it across the back. I sent it back. The next day, they sent me an email saying, "Hey, Rick, we got your ballot. All good. It's here. Hand-marked paper ballot. You can check it off against a list. Sane, rational, smart. Why we're not going to do it." So we went through, 60 plus trials? The Trump people lost almost all of them. Well, I think one they won, a very small win, that eventually they lost. So at every step, what they presented in the court of law, they lost because they didn't have any evidence. There was nothing that they could bring into the court of law that was not debunked, that was not asking for perjury. Was not putting people in the position that they were going to lie and end up in jail. And that's where I paid attention to. As Americans, we should stop paying attention to the court of public opinion because you can lie. Perjury is not a crime. And what we saw Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell and the rest of them do was play to the court of public opinion and brought none of that into the court of law. Because after all, they are lawyers and they're smart enough to realize if they lie, that's not good. No one's been able to go, "Here, this is a fact. This is something I will take and I will swear on an oath and swear that I would go to jail over." Everything, all of these hearings we heard across the country were all not under oath. Here in Pennsylvania, when Rudy Giuliani brought his car cavalcade through, nobody under oath. So we're in this moment where clearly all avenues have been exhausted in the courts. We've heard all of their claims, none of them factual. In fact, and I don't want to make a hero out of Brad Raffensperger, but the Secretary of State of Georgia was very clear as he went through the fact that the things that the Trump campaign was claiming, not true. And now that's a Republican. That's a guy who, honestly, tried to steal the election for Donald Trump by purging almost 200,000 people before the election even happened. Because that's what Republicans have been good at. You go back to 2000, they were able to purge the voter rolls of 97,000 people who they claimed were felons. And yet when Greg Palast, investigative reporter, went back and looked at them, almost none of those people were convicted felons. In fact, one guy was going to be convicted of a felony, 7 years down the road. And the Republicans have done a great job. You got to give them credit. This was their game plan. Their game plan was to limit the number of people voting. And they've done that, especially people with the names that, are Rodriguez and Washington, Brown, people of color. They seem to do pretty good at limiting their ability to vote. So I'm in this place where I see the irregularities going on. And look, are there some things that, if you want to talk about how we make our elections safer, you got me as an ally. I'm someone who believes hand-marked paper ballots are the way to go, and you control more of how they're gotten and how they're received. Absolutely, without question. But to say that there was while Joe Biden was in his basement, he all of a sudden learned coding and stole the election, and there was this massive conspiracy to get Joe Biden into the White House but not take the Senate or the House in large numbers. You've lost me. Common sense, come on. Common sense tells you better than that. If they're able to steal one, wouldn't they give themselves a little easier row to hoe than to hope that Georgia would go for 2 Democratic senators? Seriously? So kind of my thought in where this is, I think the people who did this have to be held accountable. Anybody who, I said the day it was happening, they should put a giant fence around the whole place. Anybody inside that building, that minute shouldn't have gotten out. We should have surrounded it with the National Guard. Anybody into, you go right to a Guantanamo Bay type camp because you immediately have lost your rights. That didn't happen. So now people are trying to get on planes. And this is the funny part. People are trying to get on planes and they're on no-fly lists and losing their minds over the fact. And what's interesting is that these are folks who they really didn't think they would be held accountable. I find it quite remarkable because they've been getting away with this for so long. What happened on Wednesday, that's not the first time. These right-wing militia groups, these anti-Semites, these people, these Trump maggot, that's what they've been doing. They've done it in almost every state house across the country. They had their little armed training program at almost every state across the country. You think about Charlottesville, you think about Richmond. They've had these exercises. Wednesday was their Super Bowl. Now you go, but Rick, there were a lot of good God-fearing, honest Christian Republicans who were there who were peaceful. You're right, there were. There were people there who probably had different, like my friend that I talked to on Thursday, who is clearly having a moment of crisis of conscience on how to deal with this. I hope those people we can move together. But when you go on social media now and you hear everyone saying, it's only Antifa and it was them and we didn't do this and it was a false flag. I love that one. You've lost me. Do I want to reach across the aisle and pull the folks that I can into some bit of sanity to where we can work together? Because look, at the end of the day, we still got tons of problems. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes. Now, I do want to answer some of the questions because a lot of folks did take time to answer a couple of questions, and I wanted to get to them. Let's just start right at the top. You talk about a lot about working together to get. Let me hit this little button. You talk a lot about working together to get things done and bring two sides together, but yet you only focus on the negatives of the Trump presidency. There have been several very important things his administration has accomplished, like challenging China, Middle East peace deals, Project Warp Speed, How can I take your objectiveness seriously when all you do is focus on how bad Trump was, when we know there are many things that actually people had been trying to accomplish but never had the balls to pursue? I give Donald Trump credit every chance I can. Where I think he has done a good job, he has always gotten credit from me. The China thing, I say all the time, he was right in identifying the problem. And I frame this in the blind squirrel found a nut. He has identified the right problem, in my view. Our trade deals are horrible. Our trade deals are abysmal, and they've been both sides. If it's not the neocons, or it's the neoliberals. This is not party affiliated. This is money affiliated. Wall Street, private equity, big dollars scare me immensely. I'm just as afraid of big money as I am of overarching big government. So to say that I don't ever give Donald Trump credit is not accurate. I give him credit for identifying the problem that China was. Do I give him credit for solving the problem? No, because the problem is worse than it was. Sure, we've slapped some tariffs on people, which I was a big supporter of, but he had no follow-up plan. There was no bringing the world together to hold them in line. All there was inflaming the situation, making it worse. Our trade relations with China are really bad, and it's making them go in a much faster pace towards becoming a military rival, because I don't know if you've seen what's happening in the South China Sea. Are we going to surround the islands there with the Pacific Fleet like Eisenhower did? No. So they're literally building islands so they can put military apparatus on there. And we can't stop them because we're so indebted. And you're right, it's a problem. But he's made it worse by inflaming the situation and not having an overall strategy. So where I give Donald Trump credit on China, using the tariffs, but he kind of screwed it up because he didn't have the next plan on where does it go from there. Okay, we put tariffs on a couple of things, and then they starved our farmers. And then we gave the farmers a whole bunch of welfare. Not very strategic. So I'm hoping Biden picks up on the idea that, yes, China's a problem and moves forward. Now, the Middle East peace deal? Really? I'm not going there with you. That's a money deal. I'm sorry, I'm not buying that. I'm not going to give him credit for that. Everyone tries in the Middle East, and everyone does poorly, so I'm not going to beat him up for it either. I do give him credit for talking to North Korea, but again, did we solve the North Korea problem? No. Is North Korea going to be a problem going forward? Yeah, absolutely. And are they rattling the sabers again because Biden's coming in? Sure, because they're going to test a new guy. We'll see what Biden does on that front as well. You bring up the Project Warp Speed, and Congress did the right thing. They allocated a ton of money for our pharmaceutical companies and for pharmaceutical companies around the world to develop something. If you look at the rollout, we got major problems. I agreed with him when he said, hey, let's use the military. Let's get anybody who has any medical experience into places to give them the shots and the things that they need. We're so far behind in getting people the vaccines. That is a problem. So just to answer the question, I hope this does it for you. I'm objective in that when he's right, I give him credit for it. But when he's wrong, and I see him wrong most of the time, I point that out. Just like in the coming administration, when Joe Biden takes office, I will give Joe Biden credit for what he does, and I will hold him accountable for what he doesn't do. The thing, and I was harder on Barack Obama because there was a lot I expected from him, and he fell well short. So, sorry, I'm not gonna take that shot, but I appreciate the write-up. Next question. Facebook filed in court under well-established law. Neither Facebook nor other public publishers can be liable for failing to publish someone else's message, claiming a publisher's status. What would the repeal of Section 230 do to Twitter and Facebook's capability to operate? Should this not have been done? I'm wondering how long ThinkSpot will exist. There are a bunch of questions around Section 230, and I have got a bunch of questions here that you guys have thrown out, and I appreciate it. As I understand Section 230, now I'm not a lawyer, but as I understand it, Section 230 was put into place because pretty sure it was like an equity firm, big tech, or I mean a big money Wall Street firm. In fact, as I remember the story, the movie the Wolf of Wall Street was the company that it was based on the company that ended up suing Prodigy, I think it was, because someone had wrote something about this company on Prodigy, and they didn't take it down. And they went to court, and the judge ruled that since they moderated some comments, that Prodigy was liable. So they went and they pushed for what became Section 230, which says no provider or user in an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. Which means if I post something on Twitter, if I post something on YouTube or here on ThinkSpot, those platforms aren't responsible for what I say. I actually agree with that to a large extent. There are, as I've learned, absolute limits to that. You have absolute free speech. Now understand, when we talk about free speech here in the U.S., free speech, as our Constitution guarantees, is only between you and your government. It's not between you and me, and it's certainly not on internet platforms. That's not how it was. So, as I said, they made this ruling. So Congress acted and gave them immunity. The question that I come back to, because I see both sides of it. I see that the internet providers need to have some type of protection from being sued every time, because they don't control who puts what on where. I see that. Now they could censor everything. Try putting, playing music in the background. If I were to play any music here, since we're streaming this to YouTube and Facebook as well, try putting any music behind me. They will immediately flag it and shut it down. They can do that. They have the ability to. They can have the ability to. Anytime I say the word Republican, it flags it. It shuts it down, or Democrat, or anything. They can do it. Do you want them to have that responsibility that if they don't, every single time it's going to be a lawsuit? Of course not. Now, my view comes back to another place. I ultimately believe responsibility is for the person saying it. If we did away with 230, which I'm not horribly against either, I think that the liability should be on the person who says it. If I were to sit and rewrite it, I would give these internet, Twitter, YouTube, whatever, I would give them the ability to censor what they need to keep them from not getting legally in trouble. Defamation, threats, pornography, all of that stuff. Some of it they have now. But I would also hold the user accountable. Now you go, but Rick, that would mean that, we'd have to enforce all that. And that's the problem with it. I mean, there are tons of laws that we have in the books that we can't enforce. So having the internet, I don't like the fact that they have absolute immunity. And they don't, there's certain cases that I'm told, but for the most part they do. There's got to be a balance. And we've forgotten that balance in this country. That we think I have the absolute right to do whatever I want. No, you don't. And you never have. So for me, by repealing 230 and being done with it, I think you end up back to where we were during the Fairness Doctrine, where people just didn't get into it. Politics didn't get into it, or you had an imbalance in messengers. Something has to be done. I just don't see that anything positive is going to happen. Now, why is this now a political issue? Well, conservatives believe that they're being censored. And they're arguing that because of Donald Trump being tossed off, that's them being censored. And there was a question here on that as well about the president being censored. Here it is. What's your opinion about Facebook, Twitter, and Apple's ban on social media by conservatives to communicate their political thoughts? I've read what conservatives say that they're being censored, and I'm not seeing it. I know that's the talking point, but there have been some studies done on this that show that liberals and conservatives are blocked and banned and deplatformed at about the same pace. Here on ThinkSpot, there have been calls for, hey, have you been deplatformed? And I haven't seen the rash number of people. In fact, I've been following some conservatives who are out there screaming about Trump, and yet they haven't been deplatformed. I'm still seeing this stuff. So I think it's a talking point. I think it's one of those things that they repeat every single time. When they don't get the reach that they think they're entitled to, that they think they're being targeted. They're not. Same thing with the IRS. The IRS wasn't targeting conservative groups. In fact, they went after liberal groups in the same way. The difference was conservative groups were much more organized in their messaging, much smarter, because they've been able to grab the message and repeat it ad nauseum, and they've got the echo chamber to do it. So do I think that conservatives get censored? No, not any more than liberals or anybody else does. Now you could argue that some of their speech is outside the bounds of these platforms' terms of use. Again, following the rules, something that a lot of these people who showed up on Wednesday didn't think they have to do, and that it doesn't apply to them. I do find it interesting, the number of people that I've talked to who are surprised that people are upset by what happened on Wednesday, as if what they were doing was absolutely right. So there is that. Also, we've got another question. Let's get to this. We all believe that the so-called freedom of speech is our fundamental right. I'm not a Trump supporter, but I think he, as a citizen of a democratic country, has a right to express his opinion. Where is the free speech when the media play the role of unauthorized judges and ban some individuals from using their platforms? I got to tell you, I was against Trump being banned months ago. After Wednesday, and the dog finally bit. The analogy I use is of the barking dog. You tease the dog until it finally barks. And this is until it finally bites. And this is what Trump has done masterfully. And it's what the Republican Party has done masterfully. They have starved the dog. They've occasionally kicked the dog. They've occasionally teased the dog. And when the dog finally bites, well, they act surprised. And I'm watching a lot of these Twitter commentators and stuff who are, that every excuse under the book. No, this is what you called for. As I said, when I woke up Wednesday morning, I was expecting violence. I was expecting them to follow through on their words of, if they take my gun, I'm going to stack up bodies. I was expecting that. And I'll be honest, I'm quite dismayed by the fact that we were so unprepared as a country, that the Capitol was so unprepared to deal with the number of people that were there. Because even they, I believe, thought it was going to be overwhelmingly peaceful because they saw those people as themselves. Now, had that kind of a protest been a Black Lives Matter protest, oh, forget about it. They'd have had giant fences. They'd have had rows of National Guard. And look, I say this as a white guy. Had Black Lives Matter been there, it'd have been a different scenario. There wouldn't have been just one person who tried to get through getting shot. It'd have been a bunch. And we'd already locked them all up. There'd have been, where was Trump with the, hey, we're going to start cracking heads and we're going to come down on them? Weren't there. So, again, it comes back to this. I don't see the media judging who gets free speech and who doesn't. I see them covering things that I'd prefer them not to a lot more often than they do. But for a conservative or someone on the right to complain about not having a platform, I struggle with that. Because as somebody who does a talk radio program, good luck for me to get out to the reach of someone like Rush Limbaugh, or even someone like the guy in my neighborhood, because they own the platforms. I'll never get on the big powerhouse talk stations ever. And when I call in, or if I were to ever call in, they would censor me by shutting me down. So this is a weird kind of world where capitalism and free speech and our rights and all of that come into play. And I'm struggling with it. And someone had an interesting question here a second ago that I want to get to, that I really liked, because I think it's this one here. How do we reconcile our love of free markets, freedom of speech, and individual rights with the increasing need of regulations to control the markets and how and what individuals communicate? Do we need to redefine some of these core values that we have cherished and promoted for centuries? As I said from the beginning, I'm an FDR mindset Democrat. I believe in regulated capitalism. I don't believe in laissez-faire. I don't believe in the invisible hand of the market is going to always make the right choices. Now, it will make the right choices for the people that it's intended to. And right now what we're seeing is the market, Wall Street, all that, are making the right choices for the wealthy in this country. In fact, our billionaire class has enriched themselves to the tune of more than $1 trillion throughout this pandemic, while millions of people are losing their homes and their savings and their jobs. We need to define what the parameters are. I think what's happened is we've allowed this to get too far down the road, where the worst among us are the loudest voices, where we have people who are really good at propaganda on all sides. There's things that I see come out of the left that I'm going, anybody buying this? I think it comes back to our education system. I think it comes back to talking to people face to face. Social media is not the real world, but it's a place where people can get their views and their ideology encouraged. And look, Twitter, Facebook, all those places, they encourage people to go to the extremes. And that I'm always right. And then what you end up doing is you end up breaking yourselves apart from everyone. The reason I came here to ThinkSpot is because I actually want to talk to people who don't agree. I want to hear other people's thoughts. We may not ultimately come to an agreement on everything, but I think the idea that we don't want people storming our Capitol and killing policemen is a good start. We don't want that. I think ultimately we want to have fair, open, free, fair elections. I think we had as best as we were going to get. I think for the number of irregularities that happened, no more than any other election we've had. But this idea that somehow there was this coordinated effort by Joe Biden in his basement is crazy and not proven or provable. This idea that Trump said he won Georgia by 500,000 votes is, just on its face, illogical. But we're in this interesting time where the ravages of the extremes And I find myself more and more going, we need to dull the edges of the extremes. Much like I think of capitalism, you need to regulate. You cannot have a corporation pursuing their own interests for only their interests. There's got to be a charter that says, hey, the community is important. The shareholders are important. And what I find funny is, you may remember, I guess it's got to be almost 2 years now. The Business Roundtable came out with this statement, you may remember, that said, overwhelmingly, I think there was like 180 of the 190 people who signed on to it, who said, we're no longer going to only be focused on shareholder wealth. We're now going to care about our consumers. We're going to care about our communities, and we're going to care about our workers. Now, I called BS because I think it is BS. I think ultimately all they really care about is the bottom line and what they're going to pay off to themselves and their shareholders. But I'm hopeful. So when this thing happened on Wednesday, and understand, I have a very, very negative view of a lot of capitalists. Our corporate titans, I don't think do things out of the benevolency of their heart. I don't think our 1% does anything because, well, it's just the right thing to do. There's always something, and they understand return on investment. So on Wednesday, when the National Association of Manufacturers came out and said, oh, hey, by the way, we want Trump to resign now. To me, that was a huge message. That was a huge message that the wealthy, the people who control things, the powerful in this country are worried because Wall Street is doing so well. They're going to get tons of money through the Defense Production Act. All indications are wealth is back, and wealth is back in a big way. The wealthy are going to do even more well than they did because obviously we're in this moment. And the Democrats are going to push through a big stimulus to get business back to going. They're seeing massive dollar signs because whether you like Joe Biden or you don't, Joe Biden's a centrist. Joe Biden's got contacts to Wall Street. He's going to hear them. Now, is he going to ask them to help workers make a little bit more and do a little bit more for? Absolutely. And that's a good thing. But ultimately, Redondo is Commerce, the governor of Rhode Island, a private equity person? Come on. How can the right wing not be thrilled with that? But for me, this idea that we regulate things, and I know the right loves to say it's socialism, is how we tap down the extremes. Because I would like to believe, and maybe some of my Think Spot friends will tell me yes or no. I would like to believe that we denounce extremism on all levels. I can't get that from a lot of my Trump supporters. So I'm struggling with that. Let's move on to the next question. How do you envision the country to peacefully absorb the Trump base back into the social fabric and discourse? Do you think the consequences of uniformly denouncing these folks could be lethal down the road, or is accountability more important? Can we have both unification and accountability? I don't think you're ever going to get, to use organizing lingo, you're never going to get the fives. You're never going to get the people who are invested in their ideology and their self-worth is and their business interests and their moneyed interests are this extreme. You're never getting them. So we have to let them, we have to move them aside. You're never going to get the tinfoil hat crowd. Let them go. But that person who, well, I've always been a Republican. My parents have been Republicans. I'm voting for them. I think there's an opportunity. I think there's an opportunity to reach 10%. If 10% of the Republican Party woke up tomorrow and said, you know what, we need to change this. This is a whole new world. This is and that 10% being in the right places. This is a new world. Is that going to happen? No. And for me, it comes down to message. What we saw, in my view, in Washington on Wednesday was the culmination of 40 plus years of right-wing organizing through talk radio, through cable news, and through the internet. Like it or not, talk radio is dominated by right-wing voices. And why is that? Well, you'll hear, well, Rick, it's because they're more popular. They're smarter, they're better, they've got a better message. That's not true. What is true is they own the infrastructure. Over the decades, they've bought this up. They control it. The moneyed interests control it. And for me, Wednesday, just as much as I want to see the people who are crapping all over the hallways and pissing on the desks and stealing the mail and smashing things held accountable, I want the moneyed interests held accountable. I want the people who funded this. I want the people who have been funding this kind of extremism for decades and been getting away with it. Follow the money. And I guarantee you it goes all the way back up to the billionaire class who have been dividing us to keep us in this, I can pay half the working class to murder the other half. If I were to walk into that crowd of Trump supporters, do I think I could come out with some people agreeing with some positions? I think I can. I think an economy that works for everybody is a start. I think making people's lives better is a start. Is it universal? No. But I think it's a start. Do I think it's possible we're going to reunify the country? Yes. We've been through tough times in this country before. When Trump is gone, when Trump is out of the picture, there will be an opportunity. It depends on what the Republican Party does. Are they going to be led by the Lauren Boeberts of the party, or are they going to find somebody who's going to be the voice of, hey, we need to tap down the crazy. We need to work with Biden and get the things that we can get accomplished done. We're going to fight vehemently against the stuff that we view as too extreme, but we got to get stuff done. We got to get the vaccine into everybody's arms who wants it. We've got to get jobs for people who need it. We need to rebuild our infrastructure. We need to do those common sense down the road things that this administration didn't do. How many infrastructure weeks did we have? 1,000? I think, the one week there were 3 infrastructure week events. Did we get infrastructure built? No. So for me, there are things that we should be doing and can be doing that I hope we will. Here's another. Let me get to another question. Are you concerned about Biden's connections to big tech and corporations as major funders of his campaign? Abso-freaking-lutely. Is the working class in for another tough 4 years at the hands of further regulatory capture from big business? From further regulatory capture from big business. I'm not sure what that means. Is that you asking that, are we going to go back to putting regulations on corporations and you think that's somehow going to harm workers? I see it the other way. By not having those regulations, we're actually making workers and communities and consumers and everybody less secure. I'm a big supporter of sane, rational regulations to hold people accountable. I don't want onerous regulations for the sake of regulations, but I do think there was a reason most things were put into place, and addressing those should be something that we do. That's simple. I do fear the connections to Wall Street. Like I said, the governor of Rhode Island, I've got some serious questions about. Tom Vilsack, very moderate, conservative Democrat. I got some problems with. I got a lot of problems with the people that he's bringing in who have ties to lobbying for big tech and big business. That's a fight, and that's something over the next 4 years that I will be looking at and talking about and be angry about when things go wrong. That's the reality. So I hope I answered that. I'm concerned. What I'm more concerned about, if I can lay this out really quick, is I'm more concerned that Joe Biden is going to become one of the list of Democratic presidents who came in running on, we're going to help make the lives of working people better. Jimmy Carter, was going to repeal Taft-Hartley, didn't. Bill Clinton was going to pass a strike replacement bill. That didn't get done. Barack Obama twice shook my hand and said, we're going to get the Employee Free Choice Act or something better. That never even came up for a vote. And now you've got Joe Biden saying, the American middle class was built by labor unions. which I fully 100% agree with. Will he push the PRO Act? Will he push to make organizing easier? Because I think in this moment, more and more people are seeing the value of having a contract. More and more people are saying, "Hey, I don't want the government between me and my employer. I don't want them to tell me what I can and can't agree to, as in a right to work state." I think that we need to give workers some equal power on the job and end at-will employment. For me, this contract that I have that I work under in my freight job is the best thing that any worker could ever have. I keep it with me all the time. This says exactly, every page of this says what is expected of me, what's expected of my employer, what my wages are, what my compensation will be on health and retirement benefits, everything laid out meticulously and agreed to by both the company and the workforce. One person violates it, there's accountability. For me, that's the brilliance of having a contract. And it ends at will employment. I talk to so many people who say, well, this happened and this happened. I got fired or this happened and they just let me go and never called me back. You have no rights in an at-will situation. I believe in just cause. If you should be fired, you should be fired without question. But this frame that, unions only protect the lazy and unions, won't let anybody be fired. Nonsense, ridiculous. People get fired all the time. You just got to do it the right way. Just got to do it the right way. There's due process. There's a contract. If he violates the rules of the contract, you go by the contract to get rid of him. It's that simple. Overall, am I hopeful for the future? Yeah, I'm hopeful that Joe Biden is going to be someone who's going to unite us where he can. Is he going to get the people who are planning on showing up on the 17th and the 20th to disrupt things because they believe somehow in March Donald Trump's going to take the oath of office and we're going to have, I don't know, dual countries? I don't even know what the hell they're thinking. Do you think you're ever going to get them? No, never. And we shouldn't even waste time. What's happened is the craziest, the loudest, and really the dumbest have dominated our discourse. The people who in their heart want us divided have dominated our discourse. The people who have really highlighted our differences and hammered on those differences, they're responsible. Look, you can tear anything down. My grandfather always used to say, any idiot with a hammer can tear a house down. It takes a skilled craftsman with the right tools to build a house. In this moment, we need skilled craftsmen. We need patriots to stand up and say what happened on Wednesday was wrong. And if you've heard me in the past, when there have been riots anywhere else, I've said those are wrong as well. But this whataboutism has to stop. It was wrong. End of story. Now let's move forward. Joe Biden is going to be the next president. January 20th at noon Eastern time. Joe Biden's going to put his hand on the Bible and take the oath of office. That's going to happen. The question is what does Donald Trump do? Does Donald Trump, who said he wants a smooth transition of power, does he go away? Does he allow Biden the opportunity to move the country forward? Or on that day, does he hold a rally, a competing rally to overshadow Biden's inauguration and mobilize people to cause more problems? We'll see. From what I'm reading from right-wing voices, yes. They plan on disrupting everything they can. They plan on being not just the fly or the sand in the ointment. They want to be the razor blades. And they take great pride in doing that, in tearing things down. For the rest of us, and look, I think the sane, rational among us, I think we want things to get done. I think we want a better life. I think we want better opportunities for our kids and ourselves. So if by coming here to ThinkSpot and reaching out to people who I know don't agree with me, because I've gotten some emails from people who've said some pretty interesting stuff. If by reaching out to folks who don't agree with me that makes me wrong, I'll be wrong. But I want to make the effort. So we're going to be doing this every other week. That's the thought. Those are the comments. I hope I answered some of the questions right. Or not right, but I hope I got to the questions that everyone asked. I appreciate it. I'm going to be looking these over again and trying to answer them through the forum. So I want to get through that. And here in 2 weeks we'll do it again and see where this gets us. I'm excited about the opportunities. I'm excited to figure out how we move forward and how we expand our level of agreement. We're going to have our disagreements, but I'm hoping there's a way for us to go forward in this. Again, thank you everyone who submitted questions. I hope I hit them all. I will respond in writing to all of them in one way or another. Thanks again. I appreciate the time. We'll see you back here in what will be 2 weeks. Thanks so much.